at Cardi B even, and that's not to offend her or her music or her journey, because I know she's had a very tremendous come up story.
Yeah.
But at the same time, are we glorifying a certain lifestyle as a means of success versus what is really valuable? Is it education? Is a woman who's empowered? Is it just because of her body, because of her sexuality, or is it also because of her mind, her conditioning, her culture, the way she was raised?
And then to add another layer to that, how do you then reconcile these views with the fact that I am a Cardi B fan?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly. I'm not denoting one or the other. Exactly.
Right. How do you then reconcile all of these things?
It's all of these contrasting factors that sort of play a role, because also in a way, just to be clear, I also too believe that sexuality and women's sexuality in particular is very powerful in and of itself.
Yes.
And even to the degree that it is a tool, if you will, not necessarily in the sense that it's physically always used, maybe, to get ahead in life, but it's also a tool in terms of your demeanor, your sensibility. People want to deal with someone who they feel is attractive, who they feel is personable, who they feel is confident, you know. And I mean, those are just two small examples.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
What role does sexuality play in empowerment?
Wow.
Because it seems like if you were this ultra-sexual person, then you were disempowering yourself.
Right? But I think at the same time, you have the ability to say, I can be as sexy or as sexual as I want to be, and that doesn't take away from who I am on a Tuesday when I'm in Starbucks reading a book. Or, you know, it's still a matter of, you know, how you're viewed, but how you feel about that. I think that trumps that. Is, you know, a matter of, you know, well, I can walk down the street in a miniskirt because it makes me feel good, not because of whoever's going to catcall or whatever, you know. But it's a matter of, you know, this is what I want to wear. And I think, you know, as a young girl, we, I mean, I'm assuming that we're all of the same age group, we had different issues. Now, being a 13-year-old girl, everybody has Facebook. Everybody's on Instagram.
Everybody's on Snapchat.
Everything is for public consumption, you know? So I don't think I had it easier, but I think that there was so much less false shit, if I can cuss, excuse me.
Oh, she cussed.
But you know, there was less fluff, you know, but now you can literally get on Instagram, find out what outfit Kim Kardashian wore when she went to the grocery store today, how much the outfit cost. You know what I mean? It's that kind of consumption. But your original question was really about empowerment and sexuality, and I think that they kind of go hand in hand. You know, you should be empowered to say, you know what, I want to look as frumpy as I want, and no, I want to be as much of a person.
I can go out in my sweatsuit or my sweatpants, you know, or I can dress up and look fly. I think that true empowerment is really your decision of how you want to be, and defined by your terms, defined by your perceptions, your culture, your influences. I think identity is also experiential. And when I talk about gender identity, in this case with women, you know, I think a lot of women feel like, can I be educated and sexy at the same time? And how do we navigate sort of pulling all of these sensibilities about what it means to be a woman into the same body, into the same person? And I can say that from personal experience as a professor, you know, people think that, oh, if you're an educator, you can't be sexy. Or if you are, you know, a professional woman, you know, you work in a professional environment.
A certain level,
you can't portray a certain side of your femininity or your womanhood. But to me, I find that to be very limiting to what empowerment actually is. You know, that you for yourself can define what empowerment is. Just like, you know, the cucumber girl in Liberia, you know, on water side, she can define her femininity by empowering herself, by making market, by doing something for herself that's going to empower herself, her family. Same thing with all the way up to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who was, you know, the first female president of Liberia.
Thing out there too?
Yeah.
I read something that was very fascinating when I was having a bout of insomnia. And it was remarks from this woman in India who I think is the president of what is equivalent to their like NASDAQ, right?
Okay.
And she was saying that as like with this whole women's empowerment wave, and as time goes on, the role of men as leaders is going to become diminished. Because you hear like all of these scandals, all of these poor choices, right? And that women are going to roll into leadership roles because we we kind of have the moral values and we have the smarts, we're able to relate to people, we're able to think strategically and like all of these things.
Right.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are, and do you see that, like how having Ellen as a woman president, right? Like having all the women presidents in Europe, right? There's,
Sure.
You know, do you think that this is a trend that is going to continue?
I do think it is a trend that will continue. I think that it will have positive and negative impact on the larger global community, the larger global society. I don't think that women being in positions of power is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I think what I'm saying is that if we're not careful to strike a balance of power, all we will become is the same men who abuse power just like they have been for several hundreds of thousands of years. I think that from my belief system as a Christian woman, that I think that we can be empowered without diminishing men, because fundamentally the way that I was raised is that a man is the head of the household, that a man can be a leader, that a man is the leader, that there are certain roles and responsibilities. Now for each couple or for each relationship, they can define that for themselves. But I will always see my man or my husband as in a higher position of authority.
So I'm going to interrupt you and follow up.
Okay.
Because we're kind of talking about gender roles now,
right,
as it pertains to maybe living here in the United States or living in other parts of wherever you live. I think in our generation, we've seen a lot of change with gender roles, but, you know, it depends if you're more liberal, if you're more conservative. How do you see how, as a Liberian woman, the gender roles of today versus when your mom's time, you know, when she was, you know, younger, how do you see that the change has happened?
Definitely different. Definitely, I see elements that are never changing, maybe to a degree. You know, you will always have a food on the table for your husband when you come home, and or you may not, because now you're working 2 and 3 jobs, and your husband may not be able to find a job. And that's even on this side, even in America, in a Western context, you may have women who are working, who have higher education degrees even than your husband, higher earning potential, you know. So while I think some roles are sort of fundamentally going to remain the same, I think economic climate, the changing global economy, that is sort of shifting the roles by default, whether we want to change them or not.
Right.
My kind of perspective on gender roles, and of course I've been, you know, living in America for so long, so I don't know if my opinions and my perspective would be different had I never come to this country, But, you know, I think that it's sort of kind of fluid. It's, you know, I'm not the greatest cook. Maybe he's a better cook. So why don't you, you know, of course, you know, there's a bit of, you know, scheduling and all that kind of stuff. But if you're a better cook than I am, so I'm going to eat burnt food, burnt rice crust, everything. I'm going to be alone cooking, or, you know, and, you know, that's just how it is. I'm not saying that it might not change, you know. Some people are more traditional. And then, you know, you might be living in Liberia where you have somebody cooking for you, so you don't have to work.
Right.
I remember one time, I can remember it was like a book club meeting I was in. Anyway, we're talking about how in a traditional sense in Africa, some parts of Africa, where, you know, you have somebody helping to cook the food, right? So let's say, you know, you and your husband are there. The cook has cooked the food. Would you allow the cook to serve your husband, or would you be like and say, you know what, no, I'm going to do this part. I'm going to take over, because you know, you can afford to have the help to cook, or whatever, you know. So how would you handle that? So you gotta come home from work, you both come home at the same time. The cook not cook the food. Who will serve your husband? Will it be you, the wife in the relationship, the woman in the relationship, or is it going to be the cook serving both of you? How would you ladies handle that?
I'm definitely...
And not only in the context of Africa, sorry.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
I'm definitely having the cook serve. Because I feel like that goes back to your original question about, like, gender roles, right?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because in my current, like, relationship, we talk a lot about gender roles.
Yeah.
And because that has a direct impact on your perceived expectations of your partner.
Yes.
And how that plays out, right? Are you meeting expectations or are you not?
Right.
And we both kind of, like you, feel like things are very fluid, right? It's whoever's best equipped.
Who's best
to handle that. And I think about kind of to your other question about how gender roles have changed from like our parents' generation, or grandparents, when you hear about them bringing home the kids that their husbands have had with other women, right? Like, would any of us raise the kids of...
I mean, now, again, putting it in a I keep saying a Western context, American context, but we know that, women around the world have dealt with this, but I also found that, you're right, maybe historically that was something that was more acceptable. Nowadays, if your husband came home with some other child from somewhere, you raised that child, would you feel comfortable accepting them and dealing with those circumstances, or do you feel that, for example, we can say that that's sort of something culturally that has happened with Liberian women in the past.
And then there's the economic aspect of that too. Your husband's the breadwinner.
Right.
He pays all the bills.
He was paying all the bills.
He paid your bills.
Right.
So you don't bring that little kid in, come on in. But in, where we're talking about earlier, where things are different or could be different, where, you're the one who has the high earning potential and he may be, staying at home with the children, or, how would that situation, that's pretty interesting. I would say I wouldn't want to deal with that. I would not want to deal with that, to have to even wonder about that, but
So I'm going to ask my final question and we're going to wrap up. But if you had to define what an empowered woman looks like in 3 words, what would each of you say? 3 words.
I would say obviously strong. Someone who's strong, someone who is, it's not one word, but willing to learn. Willing to learn, because you're going to make mistakes no matter how strong or weak you are. Somebody who's strong, somebody who's willing to learn, and somebody who is kind. I want to say that, when you think about women's empowerment, it sounds like, it can sound like a lot, but it can be just something you do day to day. What are you doing on a day-to-day basis to empower yourself, empower another woman, to not pass judgment on another woman, on who might be a stripper. That's how she chooses to earn her income. So I would say kind, somebody who is strong, and somebody who is willing to learn.
Cecily, come and write her whole book. She write the whole novel now.
My bad.
So 3 words.
Right.
No, but that's awesome. But that's also what she said. All points are valid.
Right.
Yes.
I would say determined.
Yeah.
I would say embracing their femininity, because a lot of the times people think that empowerment means that you need to suppress
Become
that.
like something else.
And for the 3rd one, I would say empowerment is also about empowering others.
Yes.
So,
That's good.
I don't know how you sum that up in 1 word.
Sure. And I would say beautiful inside and out. I would say secure. And I would say always striving, willing to learn, grow. That's not 3 words, but striving, pushing forward, progressing, and also nurturing. I think an empowered woman is also can still be a nurturer. So thank you, ladies. I'm so excited that you joined us for this episode of Liberia Lectures by Liberia Connects, and we're so excited. Thank you guys for joining us, and tune in next time.